The neon lights of Myeongdong reflected softly on the wet pavement. She clutched her child's hand, balancing a bag of groceries and a backpack as the rain fell lightly. The aroma of street food mixed with the cool evening air. A sleek black car stopped near the crosswalk, and a tall man stepped out, impeccably dressed, his gaze calm but piercing. He was Joon-Ho Lee, CEO of a powerful Seoul conglomerate, a man who controlled boardrooms yet somehow looked completely out of place in the bustling night market. Yet in that crowded street, all his attention was on her, a mother, a woman he had never met, struggling yet radiant in her quiet determination. She didn't notice him yet, but he had noticed her for weeks, her small acts of kindness, the way she laughed with her child, how she never complained despite exhaustion. And for the first time, he felt a pull stronger than power, stronger than wealth, something only the heart could understand. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. This will make me so happy. Rain fell the way it always did in Seoul. Soft, steady, and unbothered by the lives beneath it. Neon lights flickered across the streets of Myeongdong, reflecting off wet pavement like broken promises. Seo-Yeon walked carefully through the crowd, umbrella tilted against the wind, her grip firm as though letting go, even for a second, might cause everything to fall apart. Her coat was old. Her shoes were worn thin, but her steps were determined. Beside her, her young son skipped around puddles, laughter bubbling from his chest as though the world were light and kind. He didn't notice the exhaustion in his mother's eyes, or the way her shoulders drooped after long days that never seemed to end. Seo-Yeon had learned how to carry the weight quietly. By morning, she was already awake, preparing breakfast with careful portions, making sure her son ate enough before school. By day, she worked at a small cafe near the subway station, standing for hours behind the counter, smiling politely at strangers who never asked her name. Her hands shook sometimes from fatigue, but she always hid it. At night, when Seoul grew quieter, she sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at unpaid bills and numbers that refused to make sense. Rent rose. Prices climbed. Dreams were postponed again and again. She had stopped asking for help. The rain was good at hiding tears. Seo-Yeon never complained. Not when her phone cracked and she couldn't afford to fix it. Not when the landlord reminded her of payments she was already struggling to make. Not even when she overheard whispers at her son's school, questions about why it was always just the two of them. In a city that admired success and perfection, women like her were easy to overlook. Yet every night, no matter how tired she was, Seo-Yeon knelt beside her son's bed. She brushed his hair back gently, memorizing the rise and fall of his breathing. Soft pause. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered. Sometimes she believed it. Sometimes she did. But she always said it anyway. Outside, Seoul continued to shine. Luxury cars glided past under glowing streetlights. Couples shared umbrellas, laughter echoing through the rain. Somewhere, dreams were being lived without hesitation. Seo-Yeon watched it all from the edge of the crowd. Invisible. Unnoticed. Or so she believed. Because in that same rain-soaked street, among strangers and neon lights, a pair of unfamiliar eyes had begun to notice her. The way she shielded her child from the rain. The way she smiled even when her heart felt heavy. The quiet strength she carried without ever asking to be seen. And on those rainy streets, in the middle of quiet struggles, fate had already taken its first step toward her. She just didn't know it yet. In Seoul, there are men who walk through the city unnoticed, and men who command attention without saying a word. Joon-Ho Lee was the latter. A sleek black car rolled silently to a stop near the curb, its polished surface reflecting the glow of neon signs and rain-soaked streets. The driver stepped out first, opening the door with practiced precision. Then Junho emerged. Tall, impeccably dressed. His movements were calm, measured, like a man used to being obeyed. Boardrooms bent to his will. Markets shifted at his decisions. To most of the city, he was a name spoken in headlines and hushed conversations. Yet tonight, standing beneath the rain, he looked strangely out of place. The night market buzzed around him, vendors calling out, umbrellas brushing past one another, strangers laughing beneath flickering lights. Junho adjusted his cufflinks absently, his gaze drifting across the crowd. And then, it stopped. Not on the glowing signs. Not on the busy street. But on her. Seo-Yeon stood near a crossing, one hand tightening around her umbrella as she shielded her son from the rain. She laughed softly at something he said, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Junho watched. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But something about the way she moved quietly, carefully pulled at him in a way nothing else had. This wasn't the first time he had seen her. For weeks now, he had noticed her in passing. At the cafe near the subway station. On rainy evenings like this. Always moving. Always giving. Never asking. A woman the city overlooked. A strength no one applauded. Seo-Yeon felt it then, a strange sensation, like being watched. She glanced up briefly, her eyes meeting his for just a second. The world seemed to slow. Rain fell. The city breathed. And in that fleeting moment, two lives that had never belonged in the same story crossed paths. Seo-Yeon looked away first, pulling her son closer as the pedestrian light changed. She didn't look back. To her, he was just another stranger in Seoul, another face in the crowd. But to Junho, that single glance lingered. As his driver quietly reminded him of the meeting waiting upstairs, Junho hesitated. His gaze followed her disappearing figure into the crowd. For the first time in years, his carefully ordered world felt unsettled. He didn't know why. All he knew was this. Some encounters don't announce themselves. They whisper. And that night, beneath Seoul's neon lights, fate had whispered his name. The rain was gone by morning, but the city still felt heavy. Seo-Yeon stood at the cafe counter near the subway station, tying her apron with tired hands. Morning commuters rushed in and out, their footsteps hurried, their faces distant. Orders were called out. Cups clinked. The day moved on fast, unforgiving. She moved with quiet efficiency. A smile here. A polite bow there. Always careful. Always composed. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly. Seo-Yeon looked up, then froze, just for a heartbeat. It was him. The man from the night market. He stood near the entrance, dressed simply today, no entourage, no polished presence that screamed power. Just a dark coat, neatly pressed, and calm eyes that scanned the room before settling on her. Junho. She didn't know his name. She didn't know who he was. She only knew that something about him felt unfamiliar, unsettling. She lowered her gaze quickly, reminding herself not to stare. Customers came and went. Men like him belonged to another world. Junho stepped forward. "One coffee, please," he said quietly. His voice was calm. "Steady." Seo-Yeon prepared the order without a word, placing the cup on the counter. As she did, her elbow brushed against a stack of receipts. They scattered across the floor. She inhaled sharply, embarrassment rising as she crouched to gather them. Before she could reach the last one, a hand appeared in her view. Junho picked it up and placed it gently on the counter. "That's all of them," he said. No smile. No lingering touch. Just help. Seo-Yeon hesitated, then bowed slightly. "Thank you." Their eyes met briefly. And something shifted. It was nothing grand. No dramatic rescue. No sweeping gesture. But as Junho walked away, he quietly left something behind. A folded bill slipped beneath the receipt tray. Enough to cover far more than a cup of coffee. Seo-Yeon noticed it minutes later. Her breath caught. She scanned the cafe, but he was already gone. Confusion settled in first. Then curiosity. Why would a stranger do that? Why help someone he didn't know? That evening, as Seo-Yeon walked home beneath clearing skies, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. The way he spoke. The way he helped without asking for anything in return. In a city where everyone hurried past one another. He had stopped. And somewhere deep within her guarded heart, a question quietly formed. Soft pause. Who was he? And why did his small gesture feel like the beginning of something far bigger? Seoul looked different at night. From the outside, it glowed, neon lights dancing against glass towers, streets alive with motion and sound. But beneath the brightness, there were quiet spaces where thoughts grew louder and hearts stayed hidden. Seo-Yeon noticed him again 3 nights later. She was closing the cafe, wiping down the counter as the last customers hurried out to catch the final trains. The bell above the door chimed softly. She didn't need to look up. She already knew. Junho stood near the window this time, the city lights reflecting faintly in his eyes. He ordered the same coffee. Spoke the same way, calm, polite, distant. But now, she watched him. Not openly. Not obviously. Just enough. She noticed how he waited instead of rushing. How his gaze drifted not to his phone, but to the people passing outside. How he carried himself like a man who had learned to stand alone, even in crowded rooms. Still, she kept her distance. Men like him didn't notice women like her. And even if they did, those stories never ended well. When she placed the cup on the counter, their fingers nearly touched. Seo-Yeon pulled back instantly. "I'll bring the rest," she said quickly, retreating behind the counter. Her heart beat faster than she wanted it to. Junho noticed. He noticed the way she guarded herself. The way she smiled, but never lingered. The invisible line she never allowed anyone to cross. Later that night, Seo-Yeon walked home under glowing streetlights, her reflection following her in darkened shop windows. She replayed small moments in her mind, the receipt he picked up, the bill he left, the way he never asked questions. Too kind, she told herself. Too unfamiliar. She had learned long ago that kindness sometimes came with expectations. And she couldn't afford to be wrong again, not with a child depending on her. Across the street, a black car slowed as she crossed the intersection. Inside, Junho watched her disappear into the crowd. He didn't follow. He didn't approach. He simply watched. Because for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't control, an awareness that refused to fade. 2 people walking the same city, carrying different worlds, hiding hearts neither of them was ready to reveal. And beneath Seoul's glowing lights, the space between them grew smaller, even as they both pretended not to notice. Children see what adults try to hide. To Minjun, the world was made of small joys, warm buns from the corner stall, yellow crosswalk lights, his mother's tired smile at the end of a long day. He didn't understand struggle the way grown-ups did. He only knew when his mother was happy and when she wasn't. That morning, Seo-Yeon walked him to school beneath a sky still heavy with clouds. She held his hand tightly, as if letting go even for a moment might invite something she couldn't control. Minjun noticed the change. "Mom," he said suddenly, swinging their joined hands, "the coffee man is back." Seo-Yeon froze. "What coffee man?" she asked, pretending not to know. "The tall one," Minjun continued, peering over her shoulder with curiosity. "He comes to your cafe. He looks lonely." Seo-Yeon's step slowed. Lonely. She hadn't thought of him that way. Later that afternoon, Minjun sat quietly at a small table in the cafe, coloring while his mother worked. The bell chimed softly. Minjun looked up first. Junho stepped inside, rain clinging lightly to his coat. Before Seo-Yeon could stop him, Minjun waved. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Junho hesitated, then nodded back, a faint smile touching his lips, small and guarded. Seo-Yeon watched it all unfold, her chest tightening. Minjun studied him openly, the way only children dared to. "You came again," Minjun said as Junho approached the counter. Junho crouched slightly to meet his gaze. "I did. Do you like my mom's coffee?" Minjun asked seriously. Junho glanced at Seo-Yeon, then back at the boy. "I think it's my favorite," he replied. Minjun smiled, satisfied. In that moment, something shifted. Seo-Yeon saw it, the way Junho listened, the way he lowered himself, the way his voice softened without effort. No performance. No expectations. Just presence. That night, as Seo-Yeon tucked Minjun into bed, he whispered, "Mom, the coffee man is nice." Her heart tightened. "Yes," she said softly. "He is." But as the lights dimmed, Seo-Yeon stared into the quiet darkness, fear creeping in alongside warmth. Children grew attached easily. Hearts did not. And as innocence illuminated what she tried so hard to guard, Seo-Yeon realized something unsettling. It wasn't just her heart at risk anymore. In a city like Seoul, stories travel faster than truth. It started quietly. A glance held a second too long. A familiar face returning to the cafe. A child waving at a stranger who didn't feel like one anymore. Seo-Yeon noticed the looks before she heard the words. Whispers followed her as she passed through the cafe, soft, careless, sharp enough to cut. Isn't that him? He comes here often. Men like that don't linger without a reason. She tried to ignore them. She always had. But doubt had a way of seeping in when the world reminded you where you stood. That evening, as Seo-Yeon wiped down tables, her manager pulled her aside. Be careful, she said gently, though her eyes held curiosity. People are talking. Talking. Seo-Yeon forced a smile, but her chest tightened. What did they see when they looked at her? A woman trying to survive. Or a woman reaching for something she didn't deserve. Later that night, as she walked home, she replayed every small interaction in her mind. The receipt he picked up, the money he left, the way he looked at Minjun. Was it kindness? Or pity? The thought unsettled her. Across the street, a black car idled longer than necessary. Junho sat inside, watching her from behind rain-speckled glass. He had sensed the shift too, the way she avoided his gaze now, the way her smiles faded quicker. Something had changed. The next time he entered the cafe, Seo-Yeon kept her distance. Her voice was polite. Her smile was practiced. Her eyes never lingered. When he placed his cup back on the counter, their fingers didn't touch this time. Junho noticed. Did I do something wrong? He asked quietly. Seo-Yeon hesitated. For a moment, she considered telling him everything, her fears, the whispers, the walls she'd spent years building. But instead, she bowed slightly. No, she said. You didn't. The lie sat heavy between them. That night, Seo-Yeon watched her son sleep, her thoughts tangled with worry. She couldn't afford misunderstandings. She couldn't afford hope. And she certainly couldn't afford a man whose world she didn't belong to. Still, her heart refused to quiet. Somewhere between rumor and reality, trust wavered. And for the first time since they met, the space between them didn't feel gentle. It felt fragile. Trouble never announced itself. It arrived the way it always did, unexpected and unforgiving. Seo-Yeon was closing the cafe late that night, Minjun seated near the door, half asleep with his backpack clutched to his chest. The streets outside were quieter than usual, rain tapping against the windows in uneven rhythms. As they stepped out into the alley, a shadow shifted behind them. Seo-Yeon felt it first, that tightening in her chest, the instinct she had learned to trust. Stay close, she whispered to Minjun. Footsteps echoed too close. Too deliberate. A man's voice cut through the rain. Hey! Seo-Yeon turned slowly, pulling Minjun behind her. Before fear could settle fully in her bones, headlights flooded the alley. A black car stopped sharply. The door opened. Junho stepped out. His voice was calm but firm. Is there a problem? The man hesitated, eyes flicking between them, then stepped back. The alley emptied as quickly as it had filled. Silence returned. Junho didn't raise his voice, didn't demand attention. He simply stood between danger and the people who mattered. Seo-Yeon's hands trembled as she tightened her grip on Minjun. Are you okay? Junho asked softly, lowering himself to Minjun's level. Minjun nodded. Seo-Yeon couldn't speak. Junho removed his coat and draped it over Minjun's shoulders, shielding him from the cold rain. The gesture was simple, but protective in a way words never could be. I didn't mean to intrude, Junho said quietly. But I couldn't leave. Seo-Yeon met his eyes then. There was no pity there. No expectation. Only concern. That night, as the car pulled away, Seo-Yeon watched the rain blur the city lights again, but this time, her heart felt different. Safer. Some men offered promises. Others offered presents. And in that moment of protection, Seo-Yeon understood something she had been afraid to admit. Kindness that asks for nothing in return is never a mistake. The Han River glowed beneath the city lights, calm and endless, like time standing still. Seo-Yeon stood by the railing, her hands wrapped around a warm paper cup, watching reflections ripple across the dark water. The night air was cool, but her thoughts were warmer, heavier. Junho stood beside her, close enough to feel, far enough not to intrude. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Some words waited their entire lives to be said. "I don't usually come here," Seo-Yeon said quietly. "I know," Junho replied. She smiled faintly. "Then why did you ask me to?" "Because this is where I finally decided to stop pretending." She turned to look at him. Junho's voice was steady, but something softer lived beneath it. "I noticed you before you ever noticed me. Not because you needed help, but because you never asked for it." Seo-Yeon's grip tightened on the cup. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough," he replied. "I know you protect what matters. I know you carry more than you show. And I know I don't want to watch from a distance anymore." The city hummed behind them. Seo-Yeon shook her head slowly. "Men like you don't choose lives like mine." "I'm not choosing a life," Junho said. "I'm choosing you." The words settled between them, heavy, terrifying, sincere. Seo-Yeon stepped back. "I can't," she whispered. "I have a child. I have scars. I don't have room for promises." Junho didn't move closer. "I'm not asking you to promise," he said gently. "I'm asking you to let me stay." Her breath trembled. For the first time in years, someone wasn't offering escape. They were offering presence. Seo-Yeon looked back at the river, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "I know," Junho said softly. And for the first time, fear didn't feel lonely. She didn't say yes, but she didn't walk away either. Under the Han River lights, hearts didn't collide. They leaned toward one another. Slowly, carefully, ready to change. Seoul had never felt smaller or larger than it did now. Seo-Yeon walked through the quiet streets, Minjun skipping ahead, a small backpack bouncing on his shoulders. Behind her, Junho followed, giving her space, but never leaving her side. It was a delicate balance, two worlds meeting in the middle. Her world was small and carefully contained work, school, home, the rhythms of survival. His world was vast and unyielding boardrooms, deadlines, expectations the city itself bent to his will. And yet, somehow, they found moments where the distance didn't matter. Junho waited for her outside the school one afternoon, holding two umbrellas, one for her, one for Minjun. He didn't speak much. He simply walked alongside them, listening to Minjun chatter about school projects, small victories, and the day's wonders. Seo-Yeon felt a strange comfort in his quiet presence. No one had offered this kind of patience before. No one had asked nothing and given everything. That evening, they walked along the Han River again, the city lights reflecting in the water like 1,000 tiny promises. Junho brought coffee for all three of them, setting Minjun's cup on a small stone wall. "Try it," he said softly. "I made sure it's just how you like it." Minjun beamed, sipping carefully. Seo-Yeon smiled, a real, unguarded smile, the kind she hadn't allowed herself in months. In small ways, their worlds began to overlap. Junho learned to appreciate the little things, Minjun's endless questions, Seo-Yeon's quiet routines, the way she measured every coin, every moment. Seo-Yeon began to see the other side of wealth, not the power, not the fear, but the patience, the subtle generosity, the way he could protect without overwhelming. One evening, as the city's neon reflected in puddles around them, Seo-Yeon looked up at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For noticing the small things," she said. "For letting me live my life, and still being here." Junho's lips curved into a faint smile. "I'll always be here. If you let me." The spaces between their worlds didn't disappear. But in those quiet, intimate moments, a bridge was forming built of trust, patience, and subtle understanding. And for the first time in a long while, Seo-Yeon believed that maybe, just maybe, their worlds could meet, without breaking either of them. Morning light spilled over Seoul, soft and golden, as if the city itself had taken a deep, gentle breath. Seo-Yeon stood in the small courtyard of her apartment building, Minjun tugging at her hand, chattering excitedly about a school project. For the first time in years, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten, just a little. Junho waited nearby, holding 2 cups of coffee, his posture relaxed yet attentive. The city buzzed around them, but here, this little space, they found calm. "Careful," Junho said softly, catching Minjun as he nearly tripped. Minjun laughed, a sound full of pure joy, and hugged him around the waist without hesitation. Seo-Yeon smiled quietly, her heart swelling with something she hadn't expected to feel so completely: peace. It had not been an easy journey. The whispers, the doubts, the small, silent battles fought every day, both inside her heart and in the streets of Seoul, had left their marks. But today felt different. In small moments, shared coffee, evening walks along the Han River, quiet dinners at home, trust had grown. Love had arrived quietly, steadily, without fanfare, without expectation. Junho approached her, hand brushing lightly against hers. "We don't have to have it perfect," he said. "We just have to be together." Seo-Yeon looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, at the patience, the protection, the quiet understanding he had offered every step of the way. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe. I want that," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. The 3 of them, Seo-Yeon, Minjun, and Junho, stood together beneath the morning sunlight, a family not defined by perfection, but by presence, trust, and love. As Minjun ran ahead to chase a fluttering pigeon, Seo-Yeon and Junho shared a glance that said more than words ever could. Life in Seoul would continue, its bustling streets, its challenges, its unexpected moments. But now, they faced it together. A new chapter had begun, one full of hope, full of warmth, full of stories yet to be written. And though the city stretched endlessly around them, for the first time, they knew they were exactly where they belonged. Love this story? Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.